Just ahead on Veterans Matters, Vietnam vet Bill Highland joins us to talk about his experiences and how he's helping today's veterans transition from military to civilian life. That's next, so stay right here. Well, I'm so pleased to have Bill Highland here with me today. Bill, thanks for coming on Veterans Matters. And you're going to share with us your story about your time serving in Vietnam and some of your experiences there. Tell us a little bit about your enlistment process and why you decided to enlist.
I was going to Southern Illinois University and I came home for summer break, and they changed my draft status to A1, meaning you were draft bait, as you were considered at that time. So a friend and I decided to come over to Charleston and speak with the Selective Service Board and volunteer to be drafted. And we were told at that time that if we were volunteering to be drafted, we were actually volunteering to go to Vietnam. And at that time, with the turmoil of the news and the media and what we heard and what was going on in the everything around the world at that time, we decided, let's go for it and find out for ourselves.
And I'd imagine you were, what, 18, 19 at the time?
Yeah, I went in the military at just at 20 years old.
Okay. So I'd imagine you got all your friends around you. You're all kind of in the same boat trying to figure out what should we do, you know, do we make the choice to go or we're told to go? Do you remember what some of those conversations were like?
Oh yeah, definitely.
With your friends?
Yeah, some of the, you know, a lot of my friends continued on with their education, which as long as you were in school, then you had a deferment from the military. And if you dropped out of out of school, then of course you were considered draft bait and you could be drafted. We did have choices. You could enlist in any one of the services. Or you could have went into the Peace Corps and served in a you know, in a foreign country to help the poor. And so we chose to just go in the military, get it done, get it over with, do our 2 years, and hope we came out alive.
So you're over in Vietnam. Tell me what that was like when you first got there.
It stunk. When the airplane doors opened, it literally smacked you in the face. It was, I just can't really explain the smells. For centuries they've used animal and human excrement for fertilizer on their rice paddies, and it definitely smelled pretty bad. And of course you could smell the gunpowder, the death. It was just you know, it just smothered right around your nose to where you thought, oh my God, what I get myself into. And the heat was just totally unbearable. It was a hot day. And of course they rushed us off the airliner onto buses that had wires over all the windows and doors and everything. They rushed us on the buses, and they were fueling the plane, and we no more than left the tarmac, and the plane was taken off with another load of GIs that were going home. So that was a very quick transition. And then they took us to Benoit for basically kind of a real quick physical and indoctrination into Vietnam. And then about a day later, I was sent up to Chu Lai, which was further north in the I Corps. And in the I Corps, I went to it was supposedly a 2-week combat training course to be indoctrinated into jungle warfare of their combat center. And we lasted about a week, and at that time Hamburger Hill was going on, and we had heard about a battle, but we had no idea where it was. And luckily I wasn't sent to Hamburger Hill, but I was sent a little further south to Charlie Company, 1st 52nd 198th Americal Division, which was light infantry. Light infantry meaning that I carried my weapon. I carried my 60-pound rucksack on my back with all my water, food, toiletries, extra pair of socks, grenades, claymores, trip flares, 3 bandoliers of M16 machine gun, M16 clips, and a knife on my hip, and grenade on my hip, water on my hip, and water on my rucksack, and we humped. We humped from point A to point B, meaning we walked everywhere I went.
So what was when you were you out in the jungle, slept in the jungle?
Yes.
What was that like?
We were the way I went out to my company was hop on a helicopter, my first helicopter ride, with all my brand new gear and brand new green jungle fatigues, and flowing out to an area that was out in the middle of nowhere. And all at once they say, we're going down, lock and load. And so we put a shell in the chamber, around in the chamber, and we started going down to land with the company that I couldn't see. I couldn't see anything except trees and some high grass, but I didn't see any individuals. Mm-hmm. Then all at once I did see an individual, and then I also noticed there was some, looked like little fireflies coming up towards us, and I couldn't figure out what it was until I heard a couple of times, and it kind of goes zing real quick, and it was enemy rounds coming up trying to shoot the helicopter down. Oh my. And so that was whizzing by your ear, and you're a sitting duck until they land or get close to the ground, then you jump off.
So did you see, when you would be out on patrol, did you see combat every day?
Sometimes every day, sometimes we saw, we were in an area with a lot of booby traps. Mm-hmm. Sometimes we'd have sporadic fire. It might be small arms fire, it might be just a couple of rounds. Other times we would go into, every day we went into an operation which they call search and destroy. We would go into an area and search it and destroy anything that was in that area. Mm-hmm. And search for documents or whatever else. And then of course, you know, during some days you may not be in combat for you know, a few days or whatever, and that gets on your nerves because you're wondering when it's going to happen again. Mm-hmm. And sometimes it may not happen for a few days, and then all at once it will. Mm-hmm. But at least 2-3 times a week, a squad of anywhere from 5 to 10 men would go out from the NDP, which is night defensive position, and we would go out and patrol or set up for an ambush to ambush the enemy coming along a trail. And we would be up all night waiting for the enemy to come by this trail or to come by this area so we could ambush them. And of course, going to and from the rest of the company was pretty dangerous because you had no idea exactly you know, what you might confront on the way there or on the way back. Mm-hmm.
So we'll kind of fast forward a little bit. You served your time, and how long were you over there?
I was in Vietnam for 13 months, 5 days.
And you came out with 2 arms, 2 legs?
Yes.
But certainly some emotional scars.
Yes, definitely.
So we'll get to that in just a minute. Let's talk about what it was like when you came back to the United States. What kind of reception did you have from the public?
When I got back at the airport, in Seattle, Washington. We got off a bus and went into the airport, and we heard a couple of comments, but we weren't sure what they were, but that we knew they were kind of directed to us, and we kind of looked around and had a few comments, maybe a few hand gestures, and then we noticed immediately that there was 2 police officers that were behind us. They weren't real close to us, but they kept within distance of us. And we went to a bar, restaurant, whatever it was in the airport to get something to eat, and they basically followed us to the door and then waited. And but we heard, you know, some slight comments about you shouldn't be wearing that uniform, that's a disgrace, or we should have never been over there, and you were stupid for going, and all this and that. When I got home to Mattoon, Illinois, there was a few friends that I had that were in school that were home for the summer. I got home in June, so they were home from college, and they were there. They never said I was right or wrong. They never judged me. And to this day, we're still very good friends. They chose college. They kept the deferment. They got their education. They're doing well, and I'm happy for them. I chose the other road.
So tell me about what that transition was like, and what did you go from being a 20-year-old in combat in Vietnam back to Mattoon, Illinois. How did you adjust back to civilian life, and what did you do?
Partied a lot. Yeah. It was a very bad transition. I was, through the years, I've been asked in different instances when I was the most afraid. When I was in Vietnam, well, I was more afraid after I got home.
Really?
About 72 hours later, leaving Vietnam, you're back at your house, your mom and dad, brothers, sisters, excuse me. And you have no protection. I don't have my M16. I don't have my buddies that were with me. They stripped me of everything. And pretty scary.
How long did it take you to get past that feeling of being afraid and, getting back to that feeling of, there's no one's going to shoot me. I don't have to sleep in the jungle tonight, and try and get back to just normal life?
Even to this day, I still have problems. Sometimes dark at night, heat. If it's real hot summer, which it was this summer, it's very difficult sleeping. So right now, I don't think it's ever going to go away.
And that's common probably if you talk to a lot of other Vietnam veterans, they have the same thing, which now we identify as post-traumatic stress disorder. Back then, we've talked to several veterans on this show that have come back from Afghanistan and Iraq, and they talk about, there's such a great program for transitioning people from military life to civilian life. Back when you were coming back, were there any kind of transition programs? Did the military do anything to help you get through this, or they were just...
No.
It's just a different time?
No, it was just go home, get a job, go back to what you were doing. We trained you to do a job. You went over, you done the job. You wouldn't re-up and stay in and help us continue the job. So just go home and go away. And so that's basically what a lot of Vietnam veterans did. They went home. Some indulged themselves in education. Some in work, you know, marriages, and continued their life on. And some of them turned to religion, some turned to booze, some turned to drugs, and some just dropped out. But there was no, you know, very little help. It wasn't diagnosed. They knew it, but they never wanted to admit it. And nowadays, the federal government does admit that, you know, once you take an individual and you train them to do a certain job, which nobody else in the world wants to do, but everybody wants somebody to do it for them. And but coming home, and then they're done with you. And thank goodness, I know the government says we're doing all we can for these veterans and everything. In my opinion, and this goes along with a lot of other my friends, Vietnam veterans, when they came out was Desert Storm and Panama and this and that, we had decided at that time those veterans will not be treated as we were.
So what did you do to kind of get your life back in order? I mean, we talked, you had several different jobs, and
Yeah.
it took a while, but you have gotten things, you know, you're retired now. What has kind of helped you get through some of this?
I've been involved with the Veterans of Foreign Wars in Mattoon, and I became a member as soon as I got home in June of 1970. I became a member, but I wasn't active until the right around the 80s, and that was because of there was an individual that they wanted to build a monument in Washington, D.C. For the Vietnam veteran, which is called the Wall. And my father was a member of the VFW, and he asked my brother and I if we would come down and hear what they got to say, because the VFW was wanting to give money to this organization in Washington, D.C. for the monument. And my brother and I, which he is a Vietnam veteran as well, had more or less thought, you know, it's great to send money to Washington, D.C., because Washington, D.C. sent us to war, but Washington, D.C. didn't care about us. And so we made the comment that if you're going to spend money and send it halfway across the cotton-picking country, why don't you spend money and build a monument right here in Coles County for the deceased here in Coles County from the Vietnam War. And immediately, my brother and I became the chairman, co-chairman of this project to build a monument for Coles County Vietnam veterans. And that's basically how we got involved.
And today, we were talking earlier before we started taping the show, you actually are helping some of our young veterans that are coming out of Afghanistan and Iraq.
Yes, being involved with the VFW in the 80s, I actually became a junior vice commander, senior vice commander, and then commander of the post in Mattoon. And a lot of Vietnam veterans came out of the closet, not because of me, but because a Vietnam veteran was in a position to where they thought it was pretty cool and neat. And I think a lot of Vietnam veterans, we didn't realize, some of the guys that I met then, I didn't realize that they were in Vietnam. I didn't know that they were over there at the same times I were, even though they might be just a little bit older or a little bit younger or even the same age. And so we kind of collected that camaraderie again that you have in the military. Otherwise, I got your back, I know you got my back, and we band together, I guess you would say, and found each other. And after I had my tenure of commander down to VFW post, then I spent a year with the state of Illinois as the prisoner of war missing in action state coordinator for the Veterans of Foreign Wars, and went around the state and spoke about the 2,500 service members that were marked off the list and says they're no longer living, and yet there was proof that there were still live prisoner of war in Vietnam. And so I maintained that. Then a few years later I got involved with helping veterans receive some benefits, and that would be considered the service officer. And talking with other veterans and saying, you know, you may be entitled to some benefits from the government because your injury or your Purple Heart that you received in Vietnam, or because of your, you know, the problems that you're having, the numerous marriages you've had, the numerous jobs you've had, the dreams that you're still having. There could be benefits there. And then of course Iraq, Afghanistan came along, and I've been speaking with those individuals and saying, hey, you know, you need to think about this, and here's what you need to do. And basically I guide them to an individual that does all the paperwork, and so they get all their ducks in order. They go to the State of Illinois Service Officer here in Charleston. They give him their paperwork, and they tell him, you know, what they're considering to applying for. He fills out, he questions them a little bit, fills out the paperwork, sends it in, and hopefully we can help some of these younger veterans.
Okay. Well, Bill, thank you so much for coming on the show today and sharing your story with us, and most importantly, thank you for serving our country.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Erica Borgren, Iraq veteran and director of the Illinois Department of Veterans Affairs. Our mission is to empower veterans and their families to thrive. We do that by providing long-term care in our veterans' homes, by developing programs to address the mental health, employment, and other challenges veterans face, and by helping veterans navigate the complex system of federal, state, and local resources. Our agency is home to a team of veterans whose sole job is to help other veterans. But we can't do this work alone. We need Illinois veterans to stand up and be counted so we can better understand our veteran community and serve you better. We are calling on all Illinois veterans, even if you've personally transitioned well and aren't in need of any services, to log on to our website to stand up and be counted. You have already stood up to answer the call to service. Now, stand up and be counted to help the entire Illinois veteran community. Visit veterans.illinois.gov.
If you have questions or comments about our show, please email them to the address on the screen or give us a call during regular business hours at 581-5956. Thanks for watching this edition of Veterans Matters.